Lonnie, thank you, because you're a very hard act to follow. And I apologize, we're going to go for vibrant and color. We're going to go right back 100 years to the world of black and white. First I'll talk a little bit about some of the stuff we've done at the National Archives to celebrate and commemorate the 50th. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the F.E. Williams glass plate negative collection and some of the work we've been doing on it. So, before we begin, I want to say I've been living in Canberra for 20 years. I've come to love this town and the environment that surrounds it. I'm incredibly grateful to the Ngunnawal and Ngambri peoples for helping to ensure the spiritual viability and significance of the lands in which I'm very, very proud. I know Canberra's not for everyone, but I love it. So, as all of you know, September 16th this year marked the 50th anniversary of PNG's independence from Australian administration. And to commemorate this milestone, the National Archives of Australia embarked on multiple projects aimed at connecting our collections to PNG communities, both in Australia and overseas. One of the things that I had the great privilege of being involved in was a joint exhibition that we did with the PNG National Museum with you can see, I've got a pointer. Whee! I have to make it work. Anyway, you all know Gregory Bobley's big beard at the back. He was my co-curator at the National Museum. And they approached us because they were interested in doing an exhibition based on our photographic archives. And so in May this year, I went across to Port Moresby and we had a big workshop that was hosted by the High Commission. And I brought across about 200 copies of photographic images, and we began to think about what kind of stories we wanted to tell. And what we ended up deciding was, yes, we wanted an exhibition that featured the pioneers or the architects of independence, people like Sir Michael Samare, but that we also wanted to celebrate post-independence the pioneers of PNG society, people who advanced in the creative arts. That dance photo is my absolute favorite, in civics, in art, so on and so forth. And so that exhibition is currently up at the National Museum and Art Gallery of PNG. Back in Australia, we did a simple hall display, which we concentrated more on the day itself and trying to capture some of the spirit of the day, including a fantastic video of the day itself. And in our permanent Connections Gallery, we added a digital wall story, looking at the relationship between Australia and PNG, kind of post-World War II, and the road to independence. We also had a webinar in conjunction with the National Library and a wonderful community open day. Our very own Paravata choir performed. And that was a really nice opportunity to connect with our local community. As well as front of house activities, we also engaged in a major digitization project spanning over 18 months. And during this time, National Archives preserved and digitized over 5,500 new records, as well as preserving our existing records, including a large collection of early 20th century glass plate negatives, spanning from the late 1880s to 1937. And it's this work that I actually want to talk about, which is, I suppose, a bit ironic since I'm a curator. I actually want to talk about a collection that's very dear to my heart, which is the F.E. Williams collection. Now, the very first exhibition I ever curated was, in fact, in partnership with the Oceanic Art Society, co-curated with Chris Boylan, who's going to be talking here today. And it was an exhibition of oceanic adornment, clothing, textiles, jewelry. And one of the things we did is we dug into the University of Sydney's glass lantern collection of slides to get images that actually showed these items of adornment on the human body, what they actually looked like. And I really, this was my first experience in working with glass plate negatives. And I just fell in love with the tactility of them, their fragility, but also the fact that they hold an incredibly crisp image. So, as some of you may know, the photographer F.E. Williams was a government anthropologist in the then Australian territory of Papua. And during his time, from 1922 to 1937, he created over 2,000 images of everyday life as well as ceremonial life in 18 different locations. The significance of his collection is recognized by his inscription on the UNESCO Memory of the World Asia Pacific Register. The NAA holds 3 different, what we call series, you guys would call collections or sub-collections, including his main individual collection of glass plate negatives, as well as 2 government collections that have a number of F.E. Williams photographs in them. Some are duplicates, some are original. And one of the interesting things is because these, his 2,000 images were captured on glass plate slides, many of them are broken. And so what we can do in looking through the duplicate collections is, in order to digitize, we can digitize the unbroken slide whilst preserving the broken. Okay. So Williams worked across 6 major locations in people were actually taking photographs in village locations in Papua New Guinea at the time, but also in that his images, unlike show ponies like Frank Hurley, actually captured day-to-day life. So the very few photographers who were working in PNG at the time tended to take images of the spectacular. People in full bilas or the height of a ceremony. What is absolutely unique and extraordinary about F.E. Williams is that he did behind the scenes. He photographed things that no one else did. And Williams' familiarity and sympathy for his subjects is evidenced by the nature of the collection, which features not just, as I say, these spectacular events, but day-to-day lives and also families that he became close to. And so over time, looking at the collection, we can actually see the building of personal relationships, such as the one between Ukiravi village chief Ove Kolai and his family, who became central subjects in Williams' work. And so here we see Ove's son making a cat's cradle. He's inside the Ravi, and his cousin from another village is visiting, who isn't named, and Williams calls him the my boy. Here we see Ove's wife, Evia, plating a sago fiber basket. And as well as the picture of her plating, he also has images of close-ups, he has images of collecting sago, he has images of during the plaiting work to begin. And so we have an opportunity in digitizing and looking at these images in actually finding out some of the techniques that were used 100 years ago, and there are opportunities to then link what was happening 100 years ago to contemporary creativity today. Of course, not all communities welcome the camera. So, for example, while staying in Kairavi in the Porari Delta, Williams observed, quote, a stubborn reluctance to talk. In other words, I'll just go back up a bit. In other words, you know what I've done? I've doubled my notes. So obviously, you know, we need to be aware of the colonial context in which Williams collected his photographs. But we also need to be equally cognizant of the different agencies at play. For the villagers of the Parari Delta, to work with Williams or to actively avoid him were choices that people made according to their own agendas, according to what was to be gained or what was to be lost through dealing directly with a colonial agent. And I think it's really important that whilst we recognize Williams' agency, we also recognize the agency of his subjects, because he was actually operating in a context in which people did have the choice to just walk away or basically tell him to piss off, which we know from his field notes many people did. And why not? Okay, now it's gone stuck. Let's try it that way. There we go. However, in the majority of cases, prolonged contact allowed Williams to develop trust and to convince people that he was not there to scold them or to tax them, which many government agents were. This allowed Williams to delve deeply into the ceremonies and customs of the people he lived with. And nowhere is this more apparent than from his time in the village of Orokolo, where he became the first outsider to witness and document the great Hevehe ceremonial cycle of the Papuan Gulf. So, I mean, you probably already know, but for those of you who don't, the Hevehe was a grand ceremonial cycle. It lasted anywhere from 10 to 20 years and was central to the social, spiritual, and economic life of the Elma people. The ceremony served as a significant initiation rite for young men, marking their transition into manhood and reinforcing the system, which was a gerontocracy, where older men controlled ritual knowledge and social status. And we have here, two initiates in Kovave masks. The cycle included public displays and processions involving masked dancers, as well as secret activities within the Arabo. The Araho masks were often used for amusement and danced as a prelude to the more sacred ritual Hevehe masks. And so here we see a presentation to one of the initiates. And what is sort of amazing about these images is these are 100 years old, and they are so crisp. And there is some opportunity, now that they've been digitized, to begin to actually scan in, to get a really good sense of what kind of material, basic materials were being used, techniques of plaiting, techniques of binding, and so on and so forth. And again, what's unusual about, I've seen so many art books with images of masks. I've never seen a picture of the technique. This is the first time I've ever seen a picture that documents the actual ochre paint making process. And so here we have, and this will be a very important, we know from the fact that it's a gerontocracy, this is a senior man. His name is Old Kavai, and he's mixing paints. And so we can actually then interpolate from this that the mixing of the paints was a very, very important job that only senior men would be allowed to do. So we can begin to learn more from these photographs. Here we have the painting of one of the completed Amaha backs. This is from a Kovave mask. And you can, again, begin to, I wish I could scan in, but you begin to see the techniques that are involved. And so these images are all kind of newly digitized. And I think they're going to be really interesting. We also have, of course, some documentation of kind of different bilas, different hairstyles, different sort of techniques of making. So how do if my title is a living archive, how do we then connect these 100-year-old slides to contemporary practice and contemporary lives? And what do we do next? Well, for my mind, the first step is to actually get his complete collection digitized. So there are glass plate slides at the Museum of South Australia, at the National Archives, and at the National Archives of PNG. So what we're hoping to do next is to find some funding, do some collaborative work with our colleagues to actually get the entire set digitized. To then begin to find out, working backwards, what are duplicates, what are originals, and also to digitize his copious field notes and patrol reports, so that we can actually begin to animate these images. This starts with, obviously, the preservation process, and it can be quite intensive, particularly since many of these glass plates were broken, and so you need to rehouse them in individual little boxes so that the pieces don't further break. You then need to digitize them, you need to work on bringing the images up. They come up originally as negatives, then you have to make them into positives. And also we need to work on description. And so we have 3 of the people who worked with us and are currently working with us on the description side of the project, making sure that the language is appropriate and up to date, making sure, and this is the great thing about Williams, that people are named, making sure that village and spellings are correct so that we can actually connect descendants to their ancestors that are represented. And what we hope to do eventually is to be able to create a database that can be shared digitally so that anyone can access it. And from then, we want to then begin to bring in contemporary artists, contemporary craftspeople, weavers, potters, dancers, to begin to activate the collection so that the collection becomes more than just a historical record of the past, but actually becomes a living archive. And that is what motivates us at the National Archives in our current kind of whatever we are now, is we want to go beyond these kind of flat records, and we actually want to see people using these records and connecting these records and animating them. And so that is my blue sky dreaming for the next steps. Obviously, we are seeking funding, we're seeking support, and we're seeking partners. But anyway, I will end on that and say watch this space.